So we'll look at Canto 6, Chapter 14. This is King Chitraketu's Lamentations. So we're continuing with the story. King Parikshit inquired from Sukdev Goswami, O learned Brahmana, demons are generally sinful, being obsessed with the modes of passion and ignorance. How then could Vrittasura have attained such exalted love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana? Last time we were doing the story about Vrittasura. So continuing from that, so Parikshit is asking Sukdev Goswami, why is it that such a great demon for that matter, why was he given such a great honor? See, in the past there was another demon who was given a great honor, but he comes from the Asuras, but he was given a great honor, that was Prahlada. So here it's another one, which is Vrittasura. Why is he being given such an honor? So now they are going to be giving the reasons why this has happened. Demigods situated in the modes of goodness and great saints, cleansed of the dirt of material enjoyment, hardly ever render pure devotional service at the lotus feet of Mukunda. Therefore, how could Vrittasura have become such a great devotee? See, we were talking about demigods, and then we were talking about the sages and saints also. So the question which Parikshit is asked is very valid, because there are lots of demigods. They are not able to reach Krishna, the highest becoming their highest devotee of Krishna. Then how come a demon could do that? Even great sages that are there, the great saints that are there, they are also not in a position to reach the state of complete devotion. See, saints, they are nothing but, if you recollect, they are nothing but knowledge based. But why is it that even the saints who are situated always in the goodness, that means they are always in sattva, the modes of prakriti, sattva, whereas the demons are not in the modes of prakriti of sattva, what they are into? They are into rajas or tamas. So somebody who is situated in tamas was able to achieve godhood. That is, basically he was able to get into what we call as reaching the divine Sri Krishna. Whereas, why is it that this particular, even the sages, some of the great sages and saints, they are never able to reach God. They are not God does not mean the demigods, it means the supreme divine consciousness or Krishna. Why is it that he could do it, Vrittasura could do it, and why is it that even saints who have so much of credit in their name and demigods who are always doing good to mankind, they are not able to reach Krishna? So that is a question which he is asking. In this material world, there are as many living entities as atoms. Among these living entities, a very few are human beings, and among them few are interested in following religious principles. So the explanation is being given. There are millions and millions of billions of species which are there in the entire planetary system. Now in all this planetary system, there are so many species. In that there is one species which is a tiny bit of the whole, which is called the human beings. Now these human beings are there. In that there is a very minor portion of them, and they are able to follow these kind of religious principles. So now we are, actually you can see we are percolating it down to a very, very low level. So, O best of Brahmana, Sukdev Goswami, out of many persons who follow religious principles, only a few desire liberation from the material world. 99.99% of the people in this material world they don't even know about this thing called liberation. See, everybody, what do? They follow a ritualistic path. Everybody follows rituals. Everybody follows a religious path which is permeated by these kind of things, the do's and the don'ts in the system. Whereas religion is nothing to do with that. Religion is a pathway towards leading towards God. The yoga, as we call it, a pathway. Whereas people have absolutely no clue that religion is also leading towards what is called as liberation. So what is it? So the question which he was asked, is the answer being given is, now in these millions and billions of people in this world, now today we have I think 7.5 billion people in this world. Now in that, how many would be actually religious? It could be just about a billion or two, not more than that. And in that, how many of them are actually on the pathway towards liberation? Maybe a few hundreds or maybe a few thousand, not more than that. In that, again, there will be still more percolation down to the lowest level. So let us see. Among many thousands who desire liberation, one may actually achieve liberation. Now, in these thousands that are there, hardly one or two may achieve liberation. I mean, can you imagine the ratio that we have cut it down to? Actually, we should start with only one can achieve liberation and maybe eliminate the entire race for all you know. But think about it from that point of view. People don't know about liberation. If they don't know about liberation, how will they go over there? Now today, suppose let us say that today there is a very big show in the city and you don't know about it. Will you even go for that? No. So in the same way, since hardly anybody knows about liberation, nobody goes towards it. What do people do? They are only bothered about religious activities or rituals. They will go and visit temples and they will go and put flowers and they will show all those kind of things. You know, today there is a very great festival that is there in our world, which is basically, I come from the my Gurudev, that is Dattatreya. So yesterday, most of South India, they celebrated this Kartik Deepa, that festival, lighting lamps all over the place. Now why they were lighting lamp, nobody knows. They will say, okay, there is somebody who is lighting lamp after a few days in Tiruvannamalai or some other place. That is why I am started lighting them. But what is the meaning of this particular day? Nobody knows. Absolutely nobody knows. In North, we celebrated today's day. That is Saturday. In South, it is celebrated one day, that is on Friday. And here in North India, that is upwards, they celebrated in Saturday. Now today's day was a day when Dattatreya was born. Or you can say he came onto this earth as a being. It's a very important day for us. Now if somebody is asked, so what are you supposed to do on this day? Oh, nothing. We are supposed to make some food. We are supposed to give him some flowers, and then we are supposed to do some sort of a prayer, and so on and so forth. That is the basic thing which is called religion teaches us this only. Now, is that the real thing? So what is the real thing then? The real thing is nothing to do with these kind of offerings or these kind of flowers or whatever that is being offered. Nothing like that is important. It is to get this divine being called Dattatreya established in us. We have to get him established in us. That is, when we bring him in our heart. The idea is that. Now, if you wonder what I am talking about, let us say we have lost certain people in our lives. Okay? So what do? So if suppose it's my father's death anniversary or the birthday of my father who is no longer with me, what do? I will say, oh, he used to like jalebi, so maybe I'll get jalebi and keep. Okay, then finally what do? You offer it to the crow upstairs. That's what Hindus do, you know that. But is that what is going to happen? Is he going to come in the form of a crow and eat it? No, nothing like that. Actually, what we are doing is we are bringing his memory in our hearts. We are remembering the person and we are remembering him very fondly. It is like creating that entity inside of us. That is all that is needed to be done. The offerings which are given or not given have very little value. Yes, you can say, oh, that was his association was with a particular thing. So we are showing that to the Lord or whatever. It's okay. But the main criteria is to bring the divinity inside of us. So, in these thousands of people that are involved in seeking liberation, just a few that you can count on your finger, they are the only ones who are going to get liberation in this world. So, they give up material attachment to society. What do? Among many thousand who desire liberation, one may actually achieve liberation. How are they supposed to do it? By giving up material attachment to society, friendship, love, country, home, wife, and children. This is purely in the form of asceticism. Actually, it means sacrificing. You are basically giving up all these things. Now, when we take a literal meaning of it, that means you become a sannyasi. When you take the literal, you read the lines and you say, oh, you mean to say I am not supposed to be staying with my family. Oh, you mean to say that I should leave all my friends. Then I should not even be bothered about love. Then I should leave my country also. Okay, then home, wife, children, everything, I should be leaving all this and going. Sir, where are you going to go? Nowadays, there is no flight out of this earth also. So you can't go anywhere. So you have to forget about all these things. It only means you have to leave the attachment to this. Why are you attached to these objects? The attachment will be left. So there is no such thing as I want to do this. So what is this attachment? This attachment is nothing but what we call as desire for something. What is the desire? The desire to be living in a country. That means tomorrow, you are going to say Jai Ho or whatever. Okay. Or like Modi Sarchi is saying, make in India, something like that. Or what make in India? First make peace in India. All right. So that is the criteria. The criteria should be that to create this kind of a liberation, you have to give up these things, the desire to have these things. The desire that I want to be there. I have this country of mine. I have a wife, so I have to be there. Or I have to be attached to them. I have to attach to them, to my children. To be attached to all these material objects. You have to leave this attachment. So detach from them. So giving up desires. So giving up desires is what we are supposed to be bothered about. So I hope you understand. And among many thousands of such liberated persons, one who can understand the true meaning of liberation is very rare. So now there are many liberated souls. That is why they are called sages. Now in those thousands and thousands of sages that may be existing, see, even then there is still filtration beyond that also. Hardly one or two actually understand the meaning of this word. So now think about it. So what are we trying to finally define? We are trying to define liberation. Liberation in the form of giving up certain things. Now in that, how do you find that out? So first you have to cut all the desires. That is all that you need to do. Remove all desires from your mind. What are the desires? See, is enunciated over here. He says the attachment to society. We are so much bothered about it. So we see, poor people and we are bothered. Oh, we should go and collect money for the poor and help them. Or you say, there are certain mentally retarded or autistic children. Oh, I need to help them. I'm sorry. Attachment to those kinds of things are not there. Then, friendship. Oh, this is my dear friend. I'm sorry. There are no friendships also. So there is no such thing as attachment to any of these friendships. No love. The moment you say, I am in love with so and so, or I am in love with this one, or I am in love with that one, you are finished once again. Desireless means there is no love in your world. Then country. If there is a country and you say, I am from this particular country, and you keep on saying that. Or you say, stay in another country and you say, that is my motherland and fatherland or whatever that is. That is also not allowed. You cannot have any attachment of any kind to any country or land or place or location. You cannot have. So tomorrow you may be thrown out from there. Tomorrow you may have to go to Antarctica with all the penguins. What are you going to do? You don't know. Or you have to go to Alaska. You don't know where you are going to go. So you should not have any attachments of any land, place, position, or any of those kind of things. Neither to your home. We are so much attached to our home. This is my house. I have built it with my hard-earned money. Okay, so what? So who cares? Tomorrow the house will disappear. So what are you going to do? You know, one fine day, last 2 months ago, California, the entire place got wiped out. Billions of dollars worth of, and in India also there is another place, 3-4 months ago down. Such heavy rains, billions of dollars worth of loss was there. Place is called Visakhapatnam. I think you have heard of this place. Entire Visakhapatnam got wiped out. In last year there was Thailand, complete Thailand, that particular place got wiped out. So what about the home that you are talking about? So there is nothing called a home. You can say, I am so much attached to home. You cannot be attached to anything. There should be no desire for staying somewhere or calling that place as your location or your home. You should be a free spirit. Free spirit is what my guru stands for. That is why he is called Avdhuta. Avdhuta means you should be free to stay anywhere. There should be no such place as a binding that you have to stay over here or you got to be attached to this place. No such binding to any place or any such person or location. No, there should be no binding at all. And Gurudev, my Gurudev is like that. He can go wherever he wants to. He's an Avdhuta. He just travels. Wherever his legs are going, he will go. Or wife and children. We are so much attached to our family. This is my wife or this is my husband and this is my child. So and so is my child. We are attached. All these attachments have to go. So these are in that order. We need to free from all these things. Like I said, it does not mean running away from them. It only means that there should be desirelessness in that. O great sage, among many millions who are liberated and perfect in knowledge of liberation, one may be a devotee of Krishna or Narayana. Such devotees who are fully peaceful are extremely rare. So, in all these Jamela that is there, now there are so many sages. In all these sages, there will be a couple of sages who are devoted to Krishna. Very rare. Now, these sages who are devoted to Krishna, they are 1 in a million again. Now, what are they? They are absolutely peaceful. There is no anger, there is nothing in them which can disturb them. Absolutely peaceful to the core. And when they are lost in Krishna's love, it is like Mirabai, you can say, Mirabai was completely lost and she never had anything in her mind, or for that matter anything in her which was agitating. When a glass of poison was given to her, she did not even see it, she just drank it thinking of Krishna. So you will find that these are absolutely peaceful beings and they are very, very rare in this world. So such a type of a person is a devotee of Krishna. So Vrittasura was situated in the blazing fire of battle and was an infamous, sinful demon, always engaged in giving trouble and anxieties to others. How could such a demon become so greatly Krishna conscious? So naturally, the question is, if this person was such a deadly person, then how could he be so much involved with Krishna? So my dear Lord Sukdev Goswami, although Vrittasura was a sinful demon, he showed the prowess of a most exalted Kshatriya and satisfied Lord Indra in the battle. How could such a demon be a great devotee of Lord Krishna? These contradictions have caused me great doubt and they have made me eager to hear this from you. So the question is still the same. Suta Goswami said, after hearing Maharaj Parikshit's very intelligent question, Sukadeva Goswami, the most powerful sage, began answering his disciple with great affection. Sukadeva Goswami said, O king, I shall speak to you the same history I have heard from the mouths of Vyasdev, Narada and Deva. Please listen with attention. King Parikshit is the province of Surasena. There was a king named Chitraketu who ruled the entire earth. During his reign, the earth produced all the necessities of life. This Chitraketu had 10 million wives. Now you will wonder, 10 million wives, 1 crore, huh? That's a very dangerous situation. But although he was capable of producing children, he did not receive a child from any of them. By chance, all the wives were barren. So, yeah, I mean, you will say there is a limit to exaggeration, isn't it? There has to be some deeper meaning in this. Otherwise, how can somebody have 10 million wives and still not have children? Okay, by the way, you can think about his capacity, sir. It's very difficult to think about all these things. Our mind always goes in those directions. You know, what is this happening over here? Raj, you can smile. Okay, Chitraketu, the husband of these millions of wives, was endowed with a beautiful form, magnanimity, and youth. He was born in a high family. He had complete education, and he was wealthy and opulent. Nevertheless, in spite of being endowed with all these assets, he was full of anxiety because he did not have a son. So now think about it. The criteria for having children, so you have to go through DNA analysis. In this now, or not DNA, either trying to look at his, tree. He came from a good family. Okay, fine, very good. He was very handsome guy. He was like, like the Mills and Boons fellow, tall, dark, handsome. So he had all the qualities needed for a human being to be able to have very good children. And then on top of it, he was born in a high family and very good education. I mean, what has education got to do with having children? I don't know. In India, everybody in India, without education, they can have children. They don't need education also, by the way. He was wealthy and opulent. He had a lot of wealth and he was opulent also. Nevertheless, in spite of all these things, he never had children. So, what happens? His queen, all had beautiful faces and attractive eyes. Yet neither his opulence, his hundreds and thousands of queens, nor the land on which he was the supreme proprietor was the source of happiness for him. So, because he did not have any children, so he was very much upset about the whole issue. Once upon a time, when the powerful sage named Angira was traveling all over the universe without engagement, by his sweet will, he came to the palace of King Chitraketu. So while all this was happening in that particular kingdom, what happened? Angira was roaming all over the world. So he came to this place called Surasena. Chitraketu immediately stood up from his throne and offered him worship. That is, respectfully, he offered worship to the sage. He offered drinking water and eatables, and in his way performed his duty as a host to a great guest, which is a way of treating the guest. You are supposed to treat the guest who is a sage. You have to, basically it is, you have to wash his feet, you have to give him water to drink, you have to give him, that's a welcome. So you offer him a welcome and then you make him sit on a high stool. Basically, why high? Because you have to be always on the lower side. The idea was that today you make the guest sit lower than you so that you can look down on him. Okay. So he offered him water and all that. When the rishi was seated very comfortably, the king, restraining his mind and senses, sat on the ground at the side of the rishi's feet. So this was the criteria earlier. You had to sit at the feet of the rishi. Okay. Today, nowadays, the rishi will sit at your feet. You may think I am joking, but let us look at it from this point of view. In our world today, most of the people that say, let us say for example, today I met somebody. Now this person has come all the way thousands of kilometers to meet a person because the person is interested in knowing the future. Okay, like what do they say, religious activity, like pariharas and all. Okay, something is happening, so you do the ceremony or some sort of a bullshit you do, and it's like that. You go to somebody who's another utarte hain, ye karte hain, wo karte hain, those kind of fellows. So this person spent so much of money coming down only to this place. For what? Whereas if a real saint were to go to these people's house, they will make him sit down. It is like that. The world is exactly like this. So for the false person, they will go and pray to that person and sit down as if, yes, 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 like that, in front of that person. But whereas if there is a real person who is going over there, they will not treat him nicely. Incidentally, today one of the the head of some mutt. Okay, now most of the head of the mutts in India, I think right from Asaram Bapu to whomsoever concerned, they are all having rape cases against them. So in today's newspaper, there is an article where one of these kind of crooked fellow, he was supposed to give some 13 tests, okay, and he has said, I'm only going to give 10 tests. 3 tests I will not give. And what are the 3 tests? DNA test. Because you see, the rest of the tests are blood test and blood pressure and ECG and all that. And these 3 tests are going to connect him straight away. They are going to implicate him that he has gone and raped this girl. So these 3 tests he doesn't want to do. But the rest of the 10 tests he has gone and done. So we get such type of hypocrites in this world. First and foremost, religion doesn't teach them to do this kind of thing. But they are going and doing all sorts of nonsensical stuff. And then they are not even owning it up. Okay. We had in between one Babaji who proved it to the world that, he's an important fellow. I mean, he was an important fellow first. Now he's become an important fellow. I don't understand what this is all about. But this is what the whole world is finally coming to. So, the most important part is to be respectful. To be respectful means always sit at the feet of the sages. We have to give them respect. That's the most important part. If there is no humility in a person, how will the knowledge ever enter you? Knowledge can never enter a person who doesn't have humility at all. So humility is a very, very important thing. King Parikshit, when Chitraketu bent low in humility, see the line is also there, though I did not see the line, but I told you beforehand only, was seated at the lotus feet of the great sage. The sage congratulated him for his humility and hospitality. The sage addressed him with the following words. So if there is no humility and hospitality, no knowledge will ever come to that person. Okay. Now, so what happens is, you have to give respect. The respect is important. If you do not give respect, then how will you ever get the grace of that individual? Okay. If God is come to your house, and if you come to know that he is God, then only you will respect him. Otherwise, if you think he's come like some postman or something like that, or courier boy, you think you're going to give him respect, you're going to make him stand outside and okay, you got anything for me? And you will sign that and you will say, get lost. You won't even ask him for a glass of water. But this is how we treat. Because it's like if you have a ceremonial this thing, okay, God is coming to your place, then only you will think about him. In one of the Sai Satcharitra, Dabolkar was waiting for Sai Baba to come for his prayer, for his, he had his son's, some ceremony was there or something like that. And Sai Baba had said, I am going to come. So he kept on waiting and he was thinking, Baba is going to come, Baba is going to come. But Baba never came. Suddenly, while they were just about to start, at that point in time, there was a knock on the door. And one Muslim person comes and he gives one small image to Dabolkar. And at that time they realize that, oh, this is the image. So identifiers are required. Isn't that very funny? So you mean to say a person has to come with a badge over here, or maybe a dog tag. I am Mr. So and so. Then only you will recognize. No, respect has to be given to every Atithi. Atithi means guest. Every guest needs to be treated, because you don't know. In the Bible also it is written, I will come. You won't even know when I am coming. So be ready for me, isn't it? It is written. In most of the Christian households, they have this written. And the same motto is there even for the scouts. Be ready. Something like that. And nobody cares. So this is the reason why if a sage comes, you have to give him respect, you have to be humble, you have to offer him seed, so on and so forth. So what does the sage say to him? The great sage Angira said, my dear king, I hope that your body and mind and your royal associates and paraphernalia are well. When the 7 properties of material nature, that is the total material energy, the ego, and the 5 objects of sense gratification are in proper order, the living entity within the material elements is happy. Without these 7 elements, one cannot exist. Similarly, a king is always protected by the 7 elements, his instructor, that is his Swami or Guru, his ministers, his kingdom, his fort, his treasury, his royal order, and his friends. A normal human being is supposed to be in good health only when the 7 things are right with him. That means his senses, mind, and his ego. They have to be in under control. Doesn't mean that you have to let your ego go wild, okay? Doesn't mean that your mind is supposed to be roaming all over the town, no. So, Kushal, you have to be fine. What is fine? These 7 things are fine. Now for a king, what are the 7 things which he says? First is his Guru, then his ministers, his kingdom, his fort, his treasury, his royal order, and his friends. So everybody has to be in perfect order. So Angira is telling him, I hope all this is in fine order. O king, O lord of humanity, when the king directly depends on his associates and follows their instructions, he is happy. Similarly, when the associate offer their gifts and activities to the king and follow his order, they are also happy. So it is basically like a give and take. Now think about it. What is he talking about? He is talking about the 7 things. Even in our world, we have these 7 objects with us. Alright? What are the 7 objects? We have our eyes, ears, nose, so on and so forth. Now let us say if eye is having a problem. Now you have conjunctivitis, or maybe your eye is broken or something like that, or ear, you have gone deaf. Is there any exchange from there? No. There is no exchange. You can't see some objects over there. Or maybe you have a problem. You are not able to smell, you are not able to taste. When you are very sick, you cannot taste things. At that time, that one particular function is out of sync. So when it is out of sync, if it is not performing well, are you not affected? You are definitely affected. The being is also affected. The eyes are not working, you are affected. If your mind is gone in a tangent, think about it, your mind is completely gone haywire. Are you not affected? You are very much affected. If your ego is literally growing and growing and growing and it's inflated to the core, what happens to you? You are definitely affected. So that is the reason why all these 7 things need to be properly conducive to you, so you get benefits from them and you are also benefiting them. How are you benefiting them? By means of proper food, proper exercise, all these yogasana and all these things, and giving them the right food, which is called knowledge as well. Everything given properly, at that point in time, you are both working in tandem with each other. So both of them are happy. O king, are your wives, citizens, secretaries and servants and the merchants who sell spices and oil under your control? Are you also full of control of ministers, the inhabitants of your palace, your provincial governors, your sons and other dependents? If the king's mind is fully controlled, all his family members and government officials are subordinate to him. His provincial governors present taxes on time without resistance, then what to speak of lesser servants? Now think, the great people, who are they? The ministers, then all the other people who are governing the whole place. This is for the king. But simultaneously, like I told you, this is your story as well. That is the reason why it is called spirituality. It's about you. Now let us say if one of the couple of ministers are not performing. Who are the ministers? Maybe you are having short of breath. Maybe you are not able to taste something. Maybe your teeth is having a pain, You know when you have toothache, what happens? You can't eat. Everything is gone for a toss. Maybe you have a headache. Maybe you have cold. You know what happens to you? All these ministers, all these kingdoms are in disarray. Your eyesight is not working properly. You have to go and wear glasses. At that point in time, are you not affected? 100% you are affected. So that is the reason why Angira is asking him this question. O King Chitraketu, I can observe that your mind is not pleased. You seem not to have achieved your desired goal. Is this because of you yourself, or has it been caused by others? Your pale face reflects your deep anxiety. You know, one of the biggest things is a reflection of anything that is happening in your mind or in your body is reflected on the face. You know, if your anxiety is there, you have a very different kind of a face. When you smile, it's a different face. So it is reflected in the face. A face is literally like a mirror of your mind and the mirror of the health of every part of your body. If you have too much of acidity in you, you know how your face is going to be, isn't it? So it's going to be full of that, like that. No, when you are full of smiles, you know your hajma is perfect. Hajma means your digestive system is perfect. When your face is smiling, you know that there are no anxieties in your world. I know there are some people who can act out, no doubt about it. But we are talking about real people. Somebody who is a devotee, okay? We are not talking about some fake artist. We are talking about the devotee. The devotee will show that face is a reflective medium. It shows exactly what is going on inside of you. So he's asking him, Sukadeva Goswami said, O King Parikshit, although the great sage Angira knew everything, he inquired from the king in this way. Thus King Chitraketu, desiring a son, bent low in great humility and spoke to the great sage as follows. Now, you can't go and do a Ghoshana or news in this thing and say, I need a son, and you cannot say it loudly. So naturally, it has to be conveyed to the sage very quietly. So Chitraketu is now going to tell the sage what is it that he is desirous of. What is the reason for his anxiety? Everybody, if their faces have a problem, they have something in their mind or their body going wrong. So you should always ask them, what is wrong with you? Just like the sage did, Angira is asking, what is wrong with you? So he is saying, King Chitraketu said, O great Lord Angira, because of austerity, knowledge and transcendental samadhi, you are freed from all the reactions of sinful life. Therefore, as a perfect yogi, you understand everything external and internal regarding embodied conditioned souls like us. Now, why is the sage having antadnyan? Antadnyan means he has inner knowledge. He knows exactly what is happening with that other person. You will find that the sage, they know what is exactly wrong with the other person. Before the person can even speak, they already have a full idea about it. So what do? They want that person to talk so that they can remove all that illness from them. So that all the thing that is there, which is harming them, can be removed from the system. So he is saying, Chitraketu is saying, you are a great sage. You can read people's minds. You are definitely free from all these evils of this world. Your mind is not full of all crap. That is the reason why your mind being free, Yours is a universal mind. You know exactly what is happening with me. And you are a perfect yogi. So you understand the internal workings of my mind as well. O great soul, you are aware of everything. Yet you are asking me why I am full of anxiety. Therefore, in response to your order, let me disclose the cause. As a person aggrieved by hunger and thirst, he is not pleased by the external gratification of flower garlands or sandalwood pulp. I am not pleased with my empire, opulence, or possessions, which are desirable even for great demigods, because I have no son. So he is telling the sage, please understand, I have a big anxiety on my hand. This one anxiety is what? I don't have a son. So this kingdom which might be very nice to me, which I is full of grandeur and glory and there's so much money flowing and so on and so forth, I do not find ruchi. Ruchi is, I don't find anything nice in this. Why? Because my main problem is this, I don't have a son. Those who are having desires, some people who have desires, if the desire is eating them to such a level, the rest of their life is full of disaster, that they cannot see anything happening. Now let us say, for example, somebody has been giving the pink slip. You know what a pink slip is, I'm sure you know that. When the pink slip is given, if he is going home or she is going home, what is the thing that they have in their mind? Do they think about, oh, my wife is going to welcome, or my husband is going to welcome me, or my children will be there, everything will be fine and blah blah blah, everything? No. Their entire life is upside down. They are not able to focus. Nothing seems nice in their world at that point in time. This is what happens to the person. Remember, a sage is a person without any desires, whereas a material worldly person like this particular king called Chitraketu, he has certain desires. The desire is to have a son, and because of that desire, he is having this anxiety, and this anxiety is the root cause of all his problems in the world. In response to the request, therefore, O great sage, please save me from my forefathers, who are descending to the darkness of hell because I have no progeny. Kindly do something so that I may have a son to deliver us from the hellish conditions. So he is asking for a son. In response to the request of Maharaj Chitraketu, Angira Rishi, who was born of Lord Brahma's mind, was very merciful towards him. Because the sage was a great powerful personality, he performed a sacrifice by offering oblations or sweet rice to Twasta. O Parikshit Maharaj, best of the Bharatas, the remnants of the food offered in the yajna are given to the great sage, Angira, the first and the most perfect among Chitraketu's millions of fields, whose name was Kratadyuti. Thereafter, the great sage told the king, O great king, now you will have a son who will be the cause of both jubilation and lamentation. The sage then left without waiting for Chitraketu's response. So what he does, he forms a particular prayer, which is like offering to Twasta. He is offering to this particular entity which can create certain objects, and he offers it, and he takes that offering and then creates a prayer on that. After saying the prayer, he offers it to this king, the fruit of that, and tells it that you please offer it to your queen. Once he offers him, he says, this person, this child which will be born, will be the cause of your happiness as well as your lamentation. Now we think that all our children are the cause of our happiness. Oh yes, of course. When we are thinking that we are going to have children, it is definitely a cause of happiness. But the moment the child comes, you know that. You can't think of day, you can't think of night also. First is you are doing day duty in the office and night duty at home of the child. Then later on you are doing day and night duty for him only so that he can go to proper school. Then college. Then to all this, and then wedding and all. We just recently visited a wedding. We had gone for a wedding of a person. Looking at that place, I am sure, all the person would not have proper hair on his head also. Maybe it's only a wig that he was wearing. The amount of tension, the amount of anxiety, the amount of pressure that was there on on one of our dearest, it was palpable. He had spent lakhs and lakhs and lakhs of rupees on just the marriage of his daughter. It was a very strange occasion. And people who had come over there were taking photographs with the great star whose birthday is there on the 12th. I mean, people were not interested in the marriage. They were interested in, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. Oh, come on. And whereas this person has gone to such a length of spending literally every penny, I think he must have ever. So don't you think it's a cause of lamentation also? You may think that to have a child is very good happiness. I'm sorry, it is a part. Lamentations are much more than happiness. Happiness is very momentary. Lamentations are going to be there throughout your life. Okay, those who have a son, tomorrow what kind of things he's going to do, you don't know, isn't it? You may have 10 girlfriends and all those girls will come to your house. What are you going to do about it? You don't know. So be ready in the future. Okay, so we have this kind of Maharathis born in our houses. So to have a child doesn't mean only happiness. It's a part and parcel. It's a whole package deal that we get. Package deal. And we have to accept it. So Angira has given him a package deal which is of jubilation as well as lamentation. As Kritika Devi, after receiving the semen of Lord Shiva from Agni, conceived a child named Skanda Kartike. Krataduti, having received semen from Chitraketu, became pregnant after eating remnants of food from the yagya performed by Angira. Now, this is just an idea about, Shivji's semen got lost in the waters, and that Kritika Devi, she was able to accept it, and then a child was born called Skanda. Skanda means Kartikeya Swami. In the same way, this king's wife got the gift and a child was born. After receiving the semen from Maharaj Chitraketu, the king of Surasena, King Kratiduti, gradually developed in her pregnancy. O King Parikshit, just as the moon develops during the bright fortnight. Thereafter, in due course of time, a son was born to the king. Hearing news of this, all the inhabitants of the state of Surasena were extremely pleased. King Chitraketu was especially pleased. After purifying himself by bathing and by decorating himself with ornaments, he engaged learned Brahmanas in offering benediction to the child and performing the birth ceremony. Actually, this is what we do. Once the child is born, we get involved in all the activities that are there. That means naming ceremony, this ceremony, that ceremony. We are so much involved in all that. Unto the Brahmanas who take part into the ritualistic ceremony, the king gave charity of gold, silver, garments, ornaments, villages, horses, elephants, as well as 60 crores of cows, 600 million cows. Oh my God. If that many cows are there in India, we will be a very, very dudo nahao puto falo. So we will have bath in milk from all these cows. Today the poor man doesn't have even milk. When a poor man gets some money, as a cloud indiscriminately pours water on the earth, the beneficent King Chitraketu, to increase the reputation, opulence and longevity of his son, distributed rainfall, all desirable things to everyone. When the poor man gets some money after great difficulty, the affection for the money increases daily. Similarly, when King Chitraketu, after great difficulty, received a son, his affection for the son increased day after day. This is called attachment starts. The mother's attraction and attention to the son, like that of the child's father, excessively increased. The other wives, seeing Krataduti's son, were very much agitated, as if by high fevers, with a desire to have son. Now think about it. If one is given and the others are not given, what happens? You are going to have maybe 99 lakhs, 19 whatever thousands worth of curses coming to you. Only one is given and the rest of the crores of them are not given. You are going to get into big trouble, sir. So naturally all those other wives of his are very, very agitated by what has happened. As King Chitraketu fostered his son very carefully, his affection for Queen Krataduti increased, but gradually he lost affection for the other wives who had no sons. The other queens were extremely unhappy due to their being sonless. Because the king's negligence towards them, they condemned themselves in envy and lamented. A wife who has no son is neglected at home by her husband and is dishonored by his co-wife exactly like a maid servant. Certainly such a woman is condemned in every respect because of her sinful life. Even maidservants who are constantly engaged in rendering services to the husbands are honored by the husband, and thus they have nothing to which to lament. Our position, however, is that we are maidservants of the maidservants, therefore we are most unfortunate. So all these rest of the wives, what are they thinking? They are thinking that, see, this one wife who has given this son, now he is after her only. With the rest of us, we are worse than servants. At least servants, at least they are treated very nicely, at least given salary and something like that. But here we are treated worse than maid servants. Sri Sukadeva Goswami continued, being neglected by their husbands and seeing Krataduti's opulence in possessing a son, Krataduti's co-wives always burned in envy, which became extremely strong. Now this is exactly what happens. If one gets and the other don't get, what happens? You burn in envy. You get very angry and you curse that other person quite a lot. As their envy increased, they lost their intelligence. Being extremely hard-hearted and unable to tolerate the king's neglect, they finally administered poison to the son. Think about it. How dangerous can that be? Huh? So they say, a woman scorned, there is a particular sentence. So think about it like that. So what do all these other wives do? They don't like to see one happy, so they do something completely deadly. They don't like this happening. It's the same thing. In this entire world, if one gets and the others don't get, that person will be unhappy. And if say other gets and the rest of them don't get, then that one person will be happy, rest will be unhappy. What do these unhappy people do? They curse. They have envy. They have anger. And they can do all sorts of wrong things. Unaware of the poison administered by his co-wives, Kratadutri walked within the house, thinking that her son was sleeping deeply. She did not understand that he was dead. Thinking that her child has been sleeping for a long time, Queen Kratadutri, who was certainly very intelligent, ordered the nurse, "My dear friend, please bring my son here." When the maidservant approached the child who was lying down, she saw that his eyes had turned upwards. There were no signs of life, and his senses having stopped, she could understand that the child was dead. Seeing this, she immediately cried, "Now I am doomed," and fell to the ground. In great agitation, the maidservant struck her breast with both hands and cried loudly in regretful words. Hearing the loud voice, the queen immediately came, and when she approached her son, she saw that he was suddenly dead. In great lamentation, her hair and dress in disarray, the queen fell to the ground unconscious. O King Parikshit, having heard the loud cries, all the inhabitants of the palace came, both men and women, being equally aggrieved, they began to cry. The queen who has administered the poison also cried pretentiously, knowing fully well their offences. So there are those people who cry just for the heck of it, isn't it? I mean, how many of us have already seen this literally in most of the processions in our house? Something happening. There are those idiots who will come and they will wail the loudest because they want to show you, whereas they have evil in their heart. When King Chitraketu heard of his son's death, from unknown causes, he became almost blind. Because of great affection for his son, his lamentation grew like blazing fire. And as he went to see the dead child, he kept slipping and falling on the ground. Surrounded by his ministers and other officers, the learned Brahmanas present, the king approached and fell unconscious at the child's feet. His hair and dress scattered. When the king, breathing heavily, regained consciousness, his eyes were tearful and he could not speak. When the queen saw her husband, King Chitraketu, merged in great lamentation and saw the dead child, who was the only son in the family, she lamented in various ways. This increased the pain in the course of the heart of all the inhabitants of the palace, the ministers and all the Brahmanas. The garlands of flower decorating the queen's head fell, and her hair scattered, falling tears melted the collyrium of her eyes and moistened her breasts, which were covered with kumkuma powder. As she lamented the loss of her son, her loud crying resembled the sweet sound of the kukari bird. So now they have lost their son. And because they have lost their son, there is so much of chaos in that particular family. Alas, O Providence, O Creator, you are certainly inexperienced in creation. And naturally, when such a type of a thing happens, who is the first to be blamed? God. Nobody takes the blame on themselves. Nobody says that they are to be blamed. Who is the one who went and asked, I want a son? Isn't it because of desire all this thing has happened? You go and ask for son, and then you lose the son because everybody is jealous of you. Isn't it because of that the whole thing has happened? Isn't it a part and parcel of your karma? And yet are you blaming God? So he says, O Providence, O Creator, you are certainly inexperienced in creation. So Gali Galoch. For during the lifetime of a father, you have caused the death of a son, thus acting in opposition to your creative laws. So now he is going to show him, who the hell do you think you are? What? Do you know the laws? You are creating the laws, huh? Okay, so he is telling God. If you are determined to contradict these laws, you are certainly the enemy of living entities and are never merciful. So now God is not merciful. My Lord, so when people get things, no, he is the most merciful. When you don't get something, no, he is the worst of the creatures. And then there is no God in that world. My Lord, you may say that there is no law that a father must die in the lifetime of his son, and that a son must be born in the lifetime of his father, since everyone lives and dies according to their own fruitive activity. However, the fruitive activity is so strong that birth and death depend upon it. There is no need for a controller or God. Yeah. So if everything is working as per the destiny, you have already written the laws, why do you need God only? All laws are already there, no? Or Newton's law say, A law say, O law, interstellar law, everything is there. Black hole and white hole and whatnot. If everything is there, why do we need a God also? So it's like this, and this person is dead. Who? iPhone fellow. Okay. Now why do you need him any which way? Let him die. At least we have an iPhone, we have an iPad, we have an iMac and all those things. We can work with that. We don't need him anyway. So this is how the person talks. So why do you need God anyway? Again, if you say that a controller is needed because the material energy does not have the power to act, one may answer that if the bonds of affection you have created are distributed by fruitive action, no one will raise children with affection. Instead, everyone will cruelly neglect their children. Since you have cut the bonds of affection that compel a parent to raise the child, you appear inexperienced and unintelligent. Wow. So he is telling God, what is this? On one side, you are saying that I should be, looking after my child and all that. And here you are not even keeping the child in front of me. So what is this you are doing? You are a brainless fellow. You don't have any brains only. You are an unintelligent chap. So God is unintelligent. So, my dear son, I am helpless and very much aggrieved. You should not give up my company. Just look at your lamenting father. We are helpless because without a son, we have to suffer in the distress of going to the darkest hellish regions. You are the only hope by which we can get out of these dark regions. Therefore, I request you not to go any further with the merciless Yama. So, at the end of the line, it is all about what? Selfishness and ego. He is bothered about him going to jail hell, not jail, hell. So he says, if I don't have a son, all of us are going to hell. So instead of, I don't want to go to hell, so you better be alive, okay? How can people be, it's a very long shot, by the way. Think about it, we also come up with such type of long stories. Actually, it is all our personal problem only, but we always say, why have you gone? God, why have you done like this? Sir, you are taking the wrong side of the story. Take the right side. You have to bell the cat, not the tail, no? From the front, not the back. My dear son, you have slept a long time. Now please get up. Your playmates are calling you to play. Since you are very hungry, please get up and suck on my breast and dissipate our lamentation. My dear son, I am certainly most unfortunate, for I am no longer seeing you mild smiling. You have closed your eyes forever. I therefore conclude that you have been taken from this planet to another, for which you will not return. My dear son, I can no longer hear your pleasing voice. Sri Sukdev Goswami continued, accompanied by his wife, who was thus lamenting for her dead son. King Chitraketu began crying loudly with his open mouth, being greatly aggrieved. As the king and the queen lamented, all the male and female followers joined them in crying. Because of the sudden accident, all the citizens of the kingdom were almost unconscious. When the great sage Angira understood that the king was almost dead in an ocean of lamentation, he went there with Narad Rishi. So now we have come to the end of this chapter, huh? And we can say, suspense will be in the next. What is going to happen? Like you say, at the end of every episode, अगले हफ्ते फिर मिलेंगे, like that. अगले एपिसोड में आपको ये पता चलेगा कि उसका बेटा जिंदा हुआ कि नहीं हुआ, like that. It's like a very interesting twist is there in the story, so we have to wait till tomorrow and find out what exactly happened. So we'll end our chapter over here and you can stop that. All right, we will do Canto 6, Chapter 15. Yesterday we had learnt about King Chitraketu, so today we will do how he is advised by Angira and Narada in the questions that he has posed to the Lord. See, he was very derogatory in his approach towards after losing his son. So naturally, Narada and Angira are going to come over there and going to appease him. Now, what exactly are they going to say? We will see. So the chapter is chapter 15. Narada and Angira instruct King Chitraketu. Sri Sukdev Goswami said, while King Chitraketu, overcome by lamentation, lay like a dead body at the side of the dead body of his son, the two great sages Narada and Angira instructed him about spiritual consciousness as follows. O king, what relationship does the dead body for which you lament have with you, and what relationship do you have with him? You may say that you are now related as father and son, but do you think this relationship existed before? Does it truly exist now? Will it continue in the future? Now these are questions which definitely very few people can actually answer. What were you before to your son? No answer. So I don't know what I was before to my son. And then what were these things that you are existing before this? So do you think that a relationship exists just now? And do you think it will continue in the future? Now his son is dead. So naturally in the next, what is he going to be of his son in the future? You need a body. You need at least something to go by. But there is nothing. So there is no answer there. O king, as small particles of sand sometimes come together and are sometimes separated due to the force of the waves, the living entities who have accepted material bodies sometimes come together and are sometimes separated by the force of time. So exactly what they are trying to give him is an explanation which says that they came together just like, maybe two clouds are coming together, or maybe two particles of sand are coming together. They come together for a certain amount of time and then they go away. When seeds are sown in the ground, they sometimes grow into plants and sometimes do not. Sometimes the ground is not fertile and the sowing of seeds is unproductive. Similarly, sometimes a prospective father, being impelled by the potency of the Supreme Lord, can beget a child. But sometimes conception does not take place. Therefore, one should not lament over the artificial relationship of parenthood, which is ultimately controlled by the Supreme Lord. So it is said that you can keep on trying, you can do whatever you want to, but till the Lord doesn't give you the permission to have a child, you cannot have a child. O king, both you and us, your advisors, wives and ministers, as well as everything moving and not moving throughout this entire cosmos at that time, are in temporary situation. Before our birth, this situation did not exist, and after our death, it will exist no longer. Therefore, our situation now is temporary, although it is not false. Now, what is he saying? Now, since Angira and Narada are meeting him, so naturally he says this is a time that we are meeting each other. We can see each other, we can face each other, we can talk to each other, just like you can talk to your wife and your courtiers and all that. But could you say that what we were doing before this or after death, what we'll be doing? So there is no way of again knowing. And that is the reason why he says that this intermediary transaction is a very, very transitory thing. It's just very, very temporary. It is there only for a moment. Now that moment could be 70 years, 80 years, but still it's just a moment in time. In the eternal time, it's just a small moment. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master and the proprietor of everything, is certainly not interested in the temporary cosmic manifestations. Nonetheless, just as a boy at the beach creates something in which he is not interested, the Lord, keeping everything under his control, causes creation, maintenance, and annihilation. He creates by engaging a father to beget a son. He maintains by engaging a government or a king to see the public welfare. And he annihilates through agents for killing, such as snakes. The agents for creation, maintenance, and annihilation have no independent potency. But because of the spell of the illusory energy, one thinks himself the creator, maintainer, and annihilator. Now, let us say, in our daily course of life, we meet so many people. Like we may go to the airport, and in the airport also you meet somebody just for a momentary point in time. Do you even pay attention to anybody? No. I'm sure we hardly pay attention to anybody whom we cross in our life. In the same way, he's saying, in this entire creation of things, your this life which is there, which may be just a couple of years from here and there, why would God want to pay attention to your life? You are just one among those billions and billions or trillions of creatures that are born on this planet Earth. Why do you think the Divine Lord is supposed to bother about you? See, these are various reasons which those two are giving him. It doesn't mean that. So see, you have to convince somebody. So you have to give him some reason to get convinced. So you give reason number 1, reason number 2, reason number 3, reason number 4. So like that, this Narada and Angira are giving him multiple reasons, multiple choice questions. You want to take whichever one you want. So he's telling Chitraketu, why will the God bother about a Kida Makoda like you? Think about it. You are just like this one small tiny ant. In our life we have these ants. You can see going all over the place. All right. Are you bothered with one particular ant? No, you are least bothered. You say, oh, the ants are coming. They are taking all the sugar and going away. You are only bothered about the sugar, not about the ants. And you would like to take maybe some spray and spray them. That is the only thing that you are bothered about. So even in this, now like these ants, millions and millions of ants, like these are human beings. So he says there are millions of and billions of human beings. So why should God be bothered about you and especially your son for that matter? अरे वो आ गया मर गया जिंदा हो गया क्या करने का है वो भगवान को क्या पड़ी है? So it's one of the explanations. So he says what does he do? He just creates. He is giving that life to that child, and then after some time he's taking it away. So what is the big deal in that? So don't get carried away by that. Now you tell a father who is grieving like this, that fellow is going to get more irritated. He will think, goli maar dunga, something like that. He is not going to like all this. So anyway, let us see. As from one seed, another seed is generated. O king, so far one body, the body of the father, to another body, that is the body of the mother, a third body is generated, a body of a son. As the elements of the material body are eternal, the living entity who appears through these material elements is also eternal. So through one body is the father, one the body is the mother, and then we take the two, seeds from both the places, and then we create the third one. What is it that is continuum? That which is continuum is not the body. The body is just coming now into existence, but there must be something which is there. What is that thing which is eternal? So we have to find that out. Division of generalization and specifications such as nationality and individuality are the imaginations of persons who are not advanced in knowledge. Now think about it. This is a very strange line, but you will find that the line is very, very instructive. What does it say? It says division of generalization and specifications. Now what are you? I am a man. I am a woman. We are having specifications, isn't it? Right? And then you say, okay, I am a human being. Okay, and then you will have further specifications. Oh, I am like this and I am like that. I come from Africa, or I come from Asia, so I am an Asian. Okay, so then are you not having generalization, and then you're narrowing it down to the territory, the region, the place? Now in Asia, where are you from? Oh, I am from the Southeast Asia. Okay, Southeast Asia, which place? Oh, You are from Indonesia. Okay, from Indonesia, which islands you are on? Okay, Sumatra. All right. In Sumatra, are you a Muslim? Okay, again in a Muslim, what kind of a Muslim are you? Are you a Shia or a Sunni? And then there is further classification. So it keeps on going down, 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 down till you come to a point. Now, think about it. How many divisions have we made in this? So nationality, individuality, we have given so many classifications. We never say that we are born on this planet Earth. No, we have specifications. I am a man, I am so and so. Okay, now think about it. In the material world, if you don't have this classification, you will be without a passport. Then you will have to find some jungle somewhere and go and stay over there. Okay, and Google Maps will find you, or whatever that is. That is the funny part in our lives, isn't it? You can't even stay away from any of these things now. So then what is it? So you are now in a very specific zone, a territory, you are known by some name, and yet are you that? So by doing these kind of various breakdowns, you are not that person, yet still are you not making that? See, Sukadeva Goswami continued, thus enlightened by the instructions of Narada and Angira, King Chitraketu became hopeful with knowledge. Wiping his shriveled face with his hand, the king began to speak. King Chitraketu said, "You have both come here dressed like Avdutas, liberated persons, just to cover your identities. But I see that of all men, you are the most elevated in awareness. You know everything as it is. Therefore, you are the greatest of all the great personalities." Now think about it. Okay. Now the child is dead. And there are these two guys who are coming over there. Naturally, there is a lot of hope which has come in him, isn't it? बोला कुछ मैजिक होएगा, तो मैजिक होएगा तो थोड़ा है ना मस्का मारना पड़ेगा. So King Chitraketu will definitely have that thing in him. Oh, you look like great Avdutas. Okay, you are the greatest personalities. Everybody in our world, we always are like this. Okay, just before we started this, we were just discussing about one occasion that happened. I believe, one of the great actors of South India, when he came onto the stage, there were his Black Cat commandos also with him, Rajni sir. Okay, with his Black Cat commandos and all. And the poor parents of the bride were thrown off the stage. And the mother had a hairline fracture. Think about it. How funny can that be? Sir, jiska occasion hai wo to hai hi nahi yahan pe. So at that time, everybody wanted to be in the picture over there. Think about it. How funny can that be? So it's like that. We are never bothered about the main cause. We are basically looking at there must be something in it for me. So all desires are ruling our. So we'll just see what happens. Brahmanas who are exalted in the position of Vaishnavas, the most dear servants of Krishna, sometimes dressed like madmen, just to benefit materialists like us, who are always attached to sense gratification and just to dissipate our ignorance. These Vaishnavas wander on the surface of the globe according to their desires. Now, he's just praising them. He says to them that, you are great people, you are the Avdutas, you are going all over the town. Yes, the devotees of Krishna, they always have very funny appearances, okay? Maybe they have one or two pair of jeans only. You don't know that. Maybe they have long hairs. You don't know that. So it is something like that. You don't know actually. They are dressed like madmen sometimes. And sometimes they come in a form which you cannot even recognize. Now, Avduta is a form which is unrecognizable. Means what? Now think about an Avduta. Yesterday my Guruji's birthday was there. He is an Avduta. Every time I have met him, he was a young boy, a teenager, not even a teenager. I can't even call him a teenager because without beard or anything, a very small young boy. And I was the one recognizing factor was I could recognize in him. I had to bow down to him. But he's a billion-year-old person. Why should he be behaving like a young boy? But that is how he is. Just like, Those who have read the books of Babaji's. Babaji, you know, no? Kriya Yoga, Babaji. The Babaji always comes like a young boy. Very strangely. If you were to meet Babaji, he is an eternal soul. He was among those 10 eternal souls that are there, and he is a young boy. You will wonder, what kind of a person is he? He's supposed to be the greatest person planet Earth, but yet. So Avdutas, they come dressed like mendicants or something. They may be behaving like completely crazy fellows, mad people. Sai Baba, when he used to visit all these places, remember, Sai Baba never left his place in Shirdi. Okay? But he was seen everywhere. Like one of my devotees, when she met Baba, he was like a bhikari, like a poor fellow bhikari. And he came and he told her, I want to eat something. Can you give me some pav bhaji? Because that girl was eating pav bhaji. So he came and he came with one dog. And they both came like bhikaris, completely like, hey, Baba, kuch deno khane ko, like that. So the girl gave them some food to eat. Strangely enough, after the food was given, they disappeared. In the sense, I mean, it was a very strange experience to them. Disappeared. How did they disappear? They ate the food, and then the girl said to that pav bhaji wala, give me one more. And when he was giving, and then she removed the money to pay him, that person said, no, you have to pay for only one pav bhaji. What do you mean by I have to pay? You just now gave me two for that poor man and that dog, you didn't give just now. So that pav bhaji wala is looking at her and saying, what are you talking about? I gave you only one. But then she remembered that this person caught hold of her hand and had tied on her wrist something. And that thing was on her wrist. She couldn't remove it. Incidentally, it turned out to be 24 karat gold. And that's a different story. So Baba can come in any form. In the same way, these Avdutas, they come in very strange forms. Okay. Yeah, of course, they can come with a jack and remove your tires also. Of course, that can also happen. And suddenly in a jiffy, they are disappeared. You don't even know where they have gone. Avdutas are always like this. They are always dressed like this. Very strangely, they will come, they will behave like madmen, and they will run away. Because they are not attached to anything. O great souls, I have heard that among the great and the perfect persons wandering the surface of the earth to instruct knowledge of people covered by ignorance. Who are those people? Sanat Kumara, Narad, Ribhu, Angira, Devala, Asita, Apantara, Vyasdev, Markandeya, Gautama, Vashishta, Bhagwan Parshuram, Kapila, Subhdev, Durvasa, Yagnavalka, Jatukarna, Aruni, Adarza, Romasa, Chavana, Dattatreya, Asuri, Patanjali, Dhaumya, the head of the Vedas, sage Panchashikha, Hiranyanabha, Kaushalya, Shrutadeva, Dhritadwaja. You must be certainly be amongst them. See, two of the famous people that I am supposed to know are over here, by the way. Yes, I've met these two guys. I should not call them guys, no? They are those Avdutas. So they are very much there and they exist. So he says you must be among one of these, one of these you must be. So because you are great personalities, you can give me real knowledge. I am as foolish and a village animal like a pig or a dog because I am merged in the darkness of ignorance. Therefore, who is the other one? One is Dattatreya and one is Parshuram. I am as foolish as the village animal like a pig or a dog because I am merged in the darkness of ignorance. Therefore, please ignite the torch of knowledge to save me. So he is saying that at least he recognized them. Remember, his mind was completely gone in the last chapter. He was giving galos to God. Now at least these two guys are here, so he's calmed down a little bit and he's saying, okay, please tell me something. Angira said, my dear king, when you desired to have a son, I approached you. Indeed, I am the same Angira Rishi who gave you this son. As for this Rishi, he is the great sage Narada, the direct son of Lord Brahma. You must be wondering, why is it that this person, even in the right senses, remember Angira Rishi is the person who had come to him earlier And why is it that right now he is not able to identify him? Remember, there are other people in that crowd, and he had blessed the king, and the king had given the fruit to his wife. So naturally, people know who Angira Rishi is. Now, how come he is not able to recognize Angira Rishi right in front of him now? This is something which even Jesus Christ, you see, when he came out of the tomb, nobody could recognize him. Nobody, not the normal person who was staying with him all their life also cannot recognize him. The reason is very simply because the divine being, when they appear in a form, in the initial form, they are in a perishable form. You know, the perishable form is like a human being, and they behave like normal human beings. And now, what is he saying? What is the king saying? Chitraketu, what is he saying? He is saying, "Oh, you must be the Avduta." So there is a dichotomy over there, isn't it? So what is that dichotomy? All these people who are called the divine beings, they come with a divine form. And the divine form is not the form that you see physically in front of you. Physically. See, when they came to you, they have appeared like human beings first time. I mean, I think all of you all have had some experience, okay? So I don't want to point out individual experience, but everybody in this group has had some darshan of some sort. You have physically encountered these people in the form of a man or a woman. Yeah, many a times you don't recognize them. You really wonder, okay, how did this person come in just when I needed help? And you meet them. And later on, when you meet them again, and that particular form is a divine form, the divine form is not the physical aspect of theirs. They are not physically in a body. What they appear is more like, okay, if you look at the material world, they will appear more like a dream-like appearance, as if there and yet not there. When you open your eyes, they are not there. Okay, so it is exactly like that. You have an idea that they are there and they are talking to you, and yet when you're ting, that in a jiffy, the whole thing disappears, and then you really wonder, oh, what is it that happened just now? Were they really there, or were they not there? So that question mark is very big, by the way. You have no clue about it, and you really feel, yes, there was somebody here, but I don't know who it was. So that is the reason why when Jesus appeared in a particular form later on, which is actually not a form, it was the divine spirit body, as we call it. Actually, it's not even a spirit body. There's nothing like a body there. It's an aspect. So when they appear like that, you really have no idea whether they are there or whether they are not there. So now you understand why you cannot recognize that person. You will not be able to identify this person to that person, because that was a form and this is not a form. That is identifiable by the physical body, which you could touch and feel and do everything, but that is not identifiable by touch or feel or anything. It is, oh, I think somebody is there, and oh, now I don't think there is anybody, and then the question mark remains, did something actually happen just now or no? That will always be the doubt. And that is the reason is because first we are seeing the physical aspect, and later on we are seeing the spiritual aspect, and the spiritual aspect can never be known. So let us see what Chitraketu does. My dear king, you are an advanced devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. To be absorbed in lamentation for the loss of something material is unsuitable for a person like you. Therefore, we have both come to relieve you from this false lamentation, which is due to your being merged in the darkness of ignorance. For those who are advanced in spiritual knowledge, to be affected by material loss and gain is not at all desirable. So they are starting with their disposition. You see, please understand that you are a great king. Don't get carried away by some death in your family or something that has happened, because it's a part and parcel of this particular universe. When I first came to your home, I could have given you the supreme transcendental knowledge, but when I saw that your mind was absorbed in material things, I gave you only a son who caused you jubilation and lamentation. These are the same words which were used earlier. He had promised him that your son will be the cause of your jubilation as well as the lamentation, which is what happened. My dear king, now you are actually experiencing the misery of a person who has sons and daughters. O king, owner of the state of Surasena, one's wife, his house, the opulence of his kingdom, and the various other opulences and objects of sense perception are all the same in that they are temporary. One's kingdom, military power, treasures, servants, ministers, friends, relatives are all cause of fear, illusion, lamentation, and distress. They are like the Gandharva Nagara, a non-existent palace that one imagines to exist in the forest. Because they are impermanent, they are no better than illusion, dreams, and mental concoctions. First and foremost, to understand this line is very tough. The reason why? Because we see everything which was mentioned over here physically right in front of our own eyes. So Chitraketu is being told, you can see your kingdom, you can see your wife, you can see all the courtiers, you can see the money, you can see the grandeur, you can see the glory that is there in your kingdom. Everything is so real for you, isn't it? But all this is a cause of your misery. Because sometimes things are there and sometimes you lose them. What is the misery? And the miseries he has mentioned. What is it that he says over here? All this happens because of fear. See? The misery of having the son and the daughter. And what is this? These are basically sense perceptions. And what are these? These are fear, illusion, lamentation, and distress. Why is it a fear, lamentation, distress, and all that? Let me give you an idea. Now let us say, for example, you have a certain desire. Now the desire may be that you want to achieve a certain position in your company. All of you are working employees. So suppose you feel, that you need a promotion or some particular position in the company. And then you become that person and you are given that position. In a few days, there is a change in the management. The management changes. Somebody else has taken over. And the next day, you have been told, you have to go now. Then what are you going to do? So isn't it such a temporary thing? I mean, in I think between this one, Senthil will agree. The entire company was disbanded. The one that you came from, complete company was disbanded. The entire force was thrown out literally. Why? Because the new management took over. So what you thought was basically a desire that I want to be there and I want to grow in my company and all that. Suddenly one day that thing doesn't exist. So isn't it a cause of lamentation? Isn't it the misery? Everything, don't you think it doesn't exist anymore? Exactly how the whole world is. You might think, today, I want this or I want that. And because of the desire, you are running after that object. And when you run after that object, the object, when you achieve it, when you get it in hand, you feel very nice about it. You say, oh, I have achieved it. And after that, the object has to come to an end, because everything that is born has to disappear, has to come to an end. And the day it goes away from you, you are going to be miserable to the core. You are going to curse everybody around you. You are going to feel, why the hell did I come in this place at all in the first place? I don't want this. So the root cause of all the fear, why is the fear there? The fear of losing. See, those who are in the high position or those who are having a job, they are afraid of losing the job, isn't it? They are afraid of losing the job. Those who have family and all, they are afraid of losing the family. Those who have a house, they are afraid. Like just now in Singapore, it's raining like anything. Now suppose it was in India. Small houses, tiny houses are there. They all get carried away by rain. How many houses get destroyed, if there is a very big rain, thunderstorm and all that? Philippines, 500,000 people are having no houses today, because from yesterday it has been pouring like nobody's business. Okay? Think about it. So the one day there is a dream, I want to have it. The next day you get the object, but the third day it disappears. And that is what he says. There is fear, and it was an illusion, because it came and it went. No, so it's naturally an illusion. You really wonder, tha kya idhar? You know, that is exactly what happened. Was it really there or not there? So illusion, and then you have lamentations, then you have this distress. So that is the reason why he says that these are certain things which you should remember. These visible objects like wife, children, and property are like dreams and mental conditions, concoctions. Actually, what we see has no permanent existence. It is sometimes seen and sometimes not. Only because of our past action do we create such mental concoctions. And because of these concoctions, we perform further activities. See, the desire to get married. Maybe when you are very young, you are in love with somebody. And the time you are very completely in a rose tinted glasses and all you are having. Okay. I am not talking about Brito only, I am talking of all of us. We all had rose tinted glasses, by the way, or he is the only guy without his glasses. Okay. Sorry. A guru and all. I'm not talking about all the married guys over here. Everybody has those dreams. Okay, we all go with our rose tinted glasses. Oh, so nice girlfriend, nice boyfriend, and all. Sir, you may get married, and after that, one fine day, everything. Where did those? Kahan gaye wo din? Jaane kahan gaye wo din? And you can see, Raj Kapoor songs after that all your life. So I am not saying that that is a bad thing to happen, but remember, it's a temporary thing. Everything, the dream that we think we are having, we all think in terms of ideal things. Anything that we want is always ideal. What is the ideal? We always think, I'm going to come first. Right from school days, we always think, I'm going to come first. I studied so hard. And maybe you get the 5th or the 6th or the 7th rank. Yeah, Raj, any problem?
I have a question. I was watching Shiv Puran, and in that Shivji tells Nandi that he has to get married. Why on planet Earth will Shivji himself say Nandi that he has to get married?
So that he can become a bull. He can get yoked. Okay, the jokes apart, I will answer the question, but first let me finish this chapter. We have got just 3 more things. I will come to your question. Why does he have to get married? So these are all mental concoctions. We come up with these rose-tinted glasses, and we think, oh, this is a nice. Incidentally, you will tell me, one day. Now that you are working in some company, okay, and then you think, oh, I should join that company. I should join that company or that company. It's a big company, is it? And then you have those dreams of joining a bigger company. And then when you join this bigger company, you rue the day you left your earlier one. And then you wonder, why the hell did I leave that earlier one? Because, from the frying pan into the fire, or maybe something else. You don't know. You really don't know. Okay. From 48 and 50 degrees, now it is -6 and -7. See how difficult it is? From the frying pan into the fire. That is not a fire, that is cold. So again, it's a strange thing, you don't even know what is hitting you. But all these are considered as just dreams. Okay? If you want to make them hit, they will hit you. Actually, if you dwell on it, dwelling on the subject matter is very simply like this, we keep on thinking about the subject so often that it becomes real for us. It's the same thing, I mean, in my life, I have met many people who were completely bent over by some sort of a pain in their life. And when I went and I told them, I said, come on, don't be silly. Nothing is wrong with you. You need to get up and start walking. You need to do this. You need to do that. Some of them underwent very serious surgeries. After surgeries, nothing happened, by the way. The doctors can never guarantee you. And some people, just by faith alone, were able to walk. Why? I mean, if you go and you do your analysis of your back, that backbone, you will find that 2-3 vertebrae are missing, something is happening, God knows, all kinds of things have happened. Then how come these people have not undergone surgery or anything like that, and how come they are walking? It's all about faith. All these are illusions. Remember, the pain is also an illusion. It's actually an illusion. You don't know. I'm not saying that physically somebody's hand is cut and all that, that is an illusion. No, no. It is, yes, the person is bleeding, everything perfect. Yes, no doubt about it. That reminds me of a story. It so happens that I'm only going to give you a small portion of it. I don't want to tell you the whole thing. There's one king, this king, particular king. Now he says that he wants have a perfect body and all that. So he always used to maintain himself perfectly. Now one day it so happens that his courtier, he's doing something and he cuts him. When he cuts him, he has that cut on his hand. And he curses that fellow and he says, I'll beat you, I'll do this to you and do that to you. And his prime minister says, sir, it's okay, everything happens for the good. So what good? My hand is cut. At that time, there is he is captured by these tribals, cannibals. Now, just when the cannibals are about to sacrifice him, they see the cut on his hand. And they look at the cut and they say, oh, this is an impure body, it's already cut. So we should not use him as a sacrifice, as a human sacrifice. And then they let him go. You see, that cut was for a certain reason, nobody understands. So it's exactly like that. Human beings do not understand the real reason why things happen. And we have no such idea in our mind why this happens. So all that I was talking about just now, you will see the rose-tinted glasses and all that. Why did it happen? Come on, there must be some reason behind it. Somebody came and asked me a question. He says, why did this happen? I said, sir, it happened because the person next in line was to be born. But if I was not married, then this person would not be there. No, I said, yeah, you are thinking about probabilities, not at all happening. Sir, the possibilities are very high. You know why? Because his naseeb is there that he is supposed to be born. And you are the scapegoats, by the way. You are the guinea pigs for who is born. So think about yourself as guinea pigs. So the idea is his birth is important, not yours. You are just a facilitator. You got what I am saying? You are just a facilitator, and that is how you should always consider. So now we'll answer your question. Let me finish this. Only because of our past actions, that is, karmas create this life. Karma, all karmas in the past have created new lives, isn't it? So he is telling him, all your past karmas has created this kind of a thing. The living entity in the bodily conception of life is absorbed in the body, which is a combination of the physical elements, the five senses for gathering knowledge and the five senses for action along with the mind. To the mind, the living entity suffers three kinds of tribulations. Adhibhautik, Adhidaivik and Adhyatmik. I think we need not again, it's like a repetition of the Bhagavad Gita once again, Therefore, the body is a source of all miseries. Who is the one who actually suffers? The person who actually suffers is actually a non-existent person. That's called your mind. Can you catch your mind somewhere? No, you can't. You say, where your mind is? I don't know where it is. And yet this is because of this character, which we call as the mind, we have all these problems called Adhibhautik, Adhidaivik and Adhyatmik. So just now when I was telling you all, some people who had the backache and all that, they don't have now, is because they have been able to overcome the mind. The mind is the root cause of all the misery, and when you overcome the mind, that particular problem in your body doesn't exist. It's like the placebo that the doctor gives, take this medicine. And you say, oh, my pain is gone. Sir, your pain will go. Of course, there was nothing in the medicine, but still it is gone. Most of these cold medicines, there is nothing in the medicine. All that you apply to your nose and your body. Here you take so much and you apply. In the film they show. The film they have to show because it has to get over. See, if the bottle doesn't get over, you don't buy the new one. And if I tell you that nothing is going to happen because of that medicine, you are not even going to buy. So you have to buy number one, and you have to use a big quantity like this, as if, and then indeed it gets over. Or you use all those other things which you get, I don't know. Everybody says, कि आज ये खाने से वो होता है, वो खाने से वो होता है, वो लगाने से वो होता है, वो लगाने. I don't know. Someday you think, eating the yolk, egg yolk is not correct. Today is there in the paper, you have to eat egg yolk also. Tomorrow it will say, don't eat egg only. After that it will say, no, eat double eggs, not once, twice in a day. So what is the truth and what is everything is unreal. See, this is exactly what it is. It's all created by the mind. Why don't you eat what comes to you naturally, eat naturally, whatever that is there in front of you, eat it. Don't bother about it. So this is how you have to live. So he says, you have been given this body with these 10 things. Okay, that is all your senses and all your organs of action, plus the mind, plus the ego and all those things. And with it, you are going to create more and more karma. If you create more and more karma, that is the reason why you are undergoing all the miseries. When you create karma, now you have to, you have to pay for it, isn't it? So when you have to pay for it in the future life, sometime in the future, you will have to pay for it. Immediate payment is not there. It's like credit card. You can pay when you get the bill. And sometimes you have to pay in small amounts. And when you pay in small amounts, you have to pay it interest. And next time you will find that your credit card is become zero now. And it is all running in minus, 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 minus. And that fellow is always calling you, sir, please make a little payment. And for that, they will come and give you a loan. For that, again, they will take interest on that. This is a very strange case. Everywhere, everybody goes through this, by the way. When you run after certain things, you will have to pay for it. You are not able to pay for it, then you have to take a loan. And then you have to pay for the loan as well as that. It's very strange. So, and it is all this is illusion, illusory. Therefore, O King Chitraketu, carefully consider the position of the Atma. In the other words, try to understand who you are. Whether body, mind or soul, consider where you come from, where you are going after giving up your body, and why you are under the control of material lamentations. Try to understand your real position in this way, and then you will be able to give up your unnecessary attachment. You will be able to give up the belief that this material or anything you directly in touch with service to Krishna is eternal. Thus you will obtain peace. I think this is like a rehash of all the films, no? What? One story, boy meet girl, blah blah blah, love story. Now you keep on repeating the same story in different format. So it's the same thing, whether you take it from whichever point of view, you can call it by whatever name you want. It's the same Bhagavad Gita, same Veda, Shastra, same story here also. He's selling the same thing. Think who you are. Are you this body? Are you this mind? Are you this soul? Who are you? You have to know this. So there are so many thoughts which are supposed to be overcome, and you are supposed to answer these questions. These questions have been done n number of times, by us in every satsang. It's the same thing. Again, also it's the same thing. So the great sage Narada continued, my dear king, attentively receive from me a mantra which is most auspicious. After accepting it from me, in 7 nights you will be able to see the Lord's face to face. So now what is he going to give? He is going to give one magic mantra to him and say, you keep on saying this mantra for 7 days so that you will be able to meet the Lord directly face to face. What is all this that we are talking about? The Ebola virus and all that. Okay, think about it. If you had all the cough and the cold and you are entering the airport, you are doing like this, they are going to take you out and put you in a quarantine, sir. So you better take a strong medicine. And strong medicine means you take a medicine which is going to not give you any like that, even on the flight. So now you understand why you are given the strong medicine. So in the same way, Angira Rishi is giving him a strong medicine. He said 7 days. Oh, pudi bana ke diya 7 days ka. In olden times, the doctors, they had that charak, charak, they'll कूट के उसका एक ये बना के उसको पूड़ी में डाल के देते थे. वैसे उसने पूड़ी बना के दे दिया और बोला कि अभी ये खाना 7 days के लिए एवरी डे, मॉर्निंग इवनिंग नाइट सब बोलने का सेम मंत्र. So like that he has given one nuska, one hot shot medicine, so that you can meet the divine Lord. My dear king, in the former days, Lord Shiva and other demigods took shelter in the lotus feet of Shankarsana. Thus, they immediately got free from the illusion of duality and unequal and unsurpassed glories in spiritual life. You will soon attain this very same position. So what is he saying? See, like Shankarshana. Shankarshana means Balrama. Okay. Now Balrama, he is now going to give some advice. So in the ancient times, even Shiva and other have gone to this place and have asked for this kind of a thing, and that is the reason why they were able to get their doubts sorted out. So your doubts are also going to get sorted out. So let us see what is going to happen in the next chapter next week. So anyway, I will answer Raj's question. So Shiva knows, okay, Shiva knows, and yet he's telling his dearest devotee, you better get married. What? Shiva himself has a very good experience of it, isn't it? He loses his first wife, and then he has to go. So the first time when he loses his wife, you know what he says? I'm never ever going to marry. I don't know. Those who have seen Shiv Puran will know. He vows, I'm never ever going to get married. And he goes and sits in the Himalaya. Why? The once bitten, twice shy. No, you say that. But no, he has to meet his Parvati once again. So he meets once again. So you really wonder, why is Shiva doing like this? He's a God, isn't it? He's God Almighty, and then why is God wanting to get married? I mean, that's the first thing he should not do. Then why does he want to get married? Like I said, Ganesha and Kartikeya had to come. You can say that as a reason, but no. In the spiritual world, their reasons are many. What are the reasons? Shiva and Parvati are not two separate things. They are not two. Appear to. They appear to you as two. Shiva is called the principle and Parvati is called the Shakti principle. So Shiva and Shakti are two separate looking principles, but they are actually one. The Shiva is, let us say it is, if you consider Shiva as entity, now the entity needs the energy to run, isn't it? So I have a bulb, the bulb needs electricity, isn't it? Then only it will light up. Otherwise, how will it light up? Correct? So it's the Shiva and the Shakti principle are also considered as Nar and Nari, two, which is also called in our world, we call it Ardha Nareshwar. That means half man, half woman conjoined together. They're conjoined together, right? So there are certain principles which have to come with the power or the source, the energy, all right? So it is Shiva and Shakti. That is why the Shiv Parvati principles are there. Now when he is advising, whom is he advising? He is advising his dearest devotee. The dearest devotee is who? Nandi. It is his Vahan. He sits on that and goes, no? Have you noticed? He sits on top of the Vahan and he goes. So, who is this? Who is this principle? What is he? Think. I want you to think very carefully. The Shiva principle stays where? And the Shakti principle is staying where? If we actually follow the Indian traditional religion, yes, the Sahasrahar, or basically...
Shakti sits on the base. Mooladhara Chakra.
Correct. Now, if you actually see, we are talking of the central nervous system with the main organ called the brain, isn't it? So, which is called in the computer language, it is called the CPU. And how does the CPU run? Sir, without your power, CPU can't run. You need the power to run that CPU, isn't it? So you need the power. The power source is important. It has to run. Now, just having a CPU is, what is the use? I mean, Intel can just give you a CPU and nothing in it. What is the point? So you need it to do something. The D or do part is important or no? So that means, what is this that the brain does? It sends and receives impulses. Sends and receives. It's a two-way communication. If I have only one-way communication, what is the point? So it is a two-way communication. So we have something which is called the efferent and the afferent two nervous systems. One on which the source is going and the other in which there is a return of information. Now those who are in the computer world, packet data, how it is sent and the receipt, is it not important? If I don't get the receipt, my next packet will not go, no. Isn't it? So it has to go and it has to come back. So that means I should get a response. The response is extremely important. Nandi is the vehicle on which Shiva works, sending responses, sending some data packets. Now I need the response back from whichever place that is needed. Now let us say I want to get a response from my finger. Don't I need some impulse to reach back to the brain, to the central nervous system? So you will find that the reason why Nandi needs to get married is because of this. Now you will say you have brought science in the picture. No, all of you are computer company fellows, okay? At least this much you are.
Don't tell me in science. That's the most boring subject.
See, I told you, na computer company में काम करके कोई फायदा ही नहीं है, कोई फायदा नहीं है. Anyway, it only means this, that in your body there is a response mechanism. It sends and it receives. Okay. Let us say your finger is put on a pointed object. Doesn't it receive an impulse from this saying that, okay, it is gone to the head? It will tell you, oh, remove your finger, otherwise you will get hurt. So what happens? A response comes to the finger, remove it. Isn't it? It's a simple understanding. Actually, that is not how it works. I don't want to go into the detail of it, but this much is sufficient to understand. It works in this simple manner. So there is a receipt going up and coming down of information. Both are in the form of different aspects. One is a question and one is an answer. Think about it like this. There is a question and there is an answer. Okay. So let us say Nandi could be a question and the one that he is marrying could be the answer. So coming and going are two responses which are very, very important and necessary for completing the entire equation. Correct? Yes or no? If I don't give you an answer, the question will still remain a question, isn't it? What? You need an answer. So response is important. Without response, nothing is going to get solved. Same way, the brain is important, but without the power, illa, no chance of anything happening. It will be just like a dud chip only, isn't it? I can preserve my brain in water and keep it and say, oh, it is containing all the DNA, RNA, this, that, all the... Well, what is the point if there is nothing going and coming inside and no power only to run it? Got the answer? So, in the material world, now what happened was in the spiritual world, what I told you is the spirit or the physical form. In the material world, when Shiva is telling Nandi to get married and not to get out of this, it is only so that the creation of the entire species happens. Species, the race has to happen. You just can't have a male. Can you? No, you need to have a female. And you just can't have only the female. You need to have the male. Both of them have to work in tandem to create and generate an entire species. Otherwise, there is no future. And that is the reason why, yes, you will say, there are certain people who are not allowed to get married. Why is it? Why are they not supposed to? No, they have come with a completeness in them. Actually, they don't understand this. Completeness is in them. Sometimes the split up of the form is there, sometimes the form is not split. Okay? It's a conjoined form in one. It's a conjoined form in one. They are a complete whole. And that is the reason why sometimes they are not allowed to do that particular thing in their world. So sometimes it is important to do because there is a reason. Sometimes it comes in dual form, sometimes in singular form, and like that it keeps on happening. So I hope you got your answer for that. All right. So I will stop here. We can cut down.